I absolutely believe he was genuine.
Okay, great. Well, I think then he needs to see a therapist.
I'd like to think this show echoes it, right? We don't really care about how people feel as long as you're not trying to, tell us how to feel. It's real simple, right?
Sure.
And it's, live your life, the best life you can possibly live, and don't tell me about it. if that makes sense, right?
Well, that's where it's not that black and white, but sure, I know what you're saying. It's the don't tell me about it part where it gets a little gray because, and that kind of leads us to, and I apologize for assuming your Mormon analogy was tied specifically to Starfield. I think what was happening was that guy, I don't know the guy, I'm not making fun of him. I look like a thumb as well, but he looks like a thumb. And he was screaming about pronouns, and I think it was very griftery, and I don't think who gets that fucking upset? It's like, dude, take a fucking Valium. But it was a character he plays, I'm sure, and it's an act and blah blah blah. But anyway, and I thought you were responding specifically to that, and you were responding to that, but it sounds like you were responding to a whole host of elements regarding the pronoun aspect. And so I apologize for assuming you were linked directly. But that what I'm saying though is that idea of we don't want to hear about it. That's the gray area because you can't help but be exposed to the world, and you can't shut out things. I mean, you can on the internet maybe, but in real life you can't sort of shut out the stuff that you find problematic. I think that's where we get into trouble.
Well, allow me to that comes down to respect too, because this is all a respect issue for me. I think if you respect somebody, you will listen to them. But if I don't know you, I don't need to listen to you, and I don't have to listen to you. And if you think I owe you to listen to you, you're wrong.
I don't think you owe anybody anything. However, I think if your prerequisite to listening to somebody is them, you're going to be very limited because how do you ever get to know people if you don't listen to people you don't know?
Well, you get a feeling from people when you meet them. You listen to how they interact with other people.
Oh, sure, but ways. Okay, fine, but nobody's owed anything in regards to things like that. I agree.
I think it's also not fair to completely write somebody off and just assume that they're grifting just because of the way that they express themselves. Like, as for example, he is extremely passionate about gaming, and that is how he expresses himself. And like of all my friend group and everything, I wouldn't say that. I mean
that was a level of Matt Foley, SNL, Chris Farley that made me go, wow, he's either playing a character or he's going to shoot somebody.
I mean, you said yourself you get angry on your streams and on your rants, and so I don't think that's fair.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, I don't know the guy. If you genuinely think that is, he doesn't know he's on camera, and when the camera's off, he's that same way, great. Then that's unfortunate for him.
I've talked to him off camera. He is a very, very passionate person.
I love passion. That's great.
He loves very passionate about his video games and all that too. And so I absolutely believe he was genuine.
Okay, great. Well, I think then he needs to see a therapist, and I don't mean that disrespectfully. I see a therapist. I don't mock people who see therapy. I think therapy is wonderful, but I'm saying that there's a point where that went beyond, in my opinion. I'm not a therapist, but when I was watching it, it went beyond going, here's the problem I have with this, and this, and whether you agree or disagree, blah blah blah, and it became like almost like lizard brain. Like it's like he was seeing red, and I'm like, dude, you don't have to play Starfield. You're not just like you were saying, you're not owed listening to somebody. He's not owed Starfield. I mean, it's like, look, don't play. There's a million other games to go play. Go play those.
I can understand that, but I think his main point was about the industry at large. It wasn't just Starfield. It was Starfield that kind of broke the camel's back, because this is something that we're seeing infecting the gaming industry, and it's becoming a lot more normalized, and it's not just some one-off thing that we can be like, oh, okay, I'll pass on this one. But because it has infected gaming as a whole, a lot more people are becoming more upset about it.
Even the verb you choose, infected, It's language that's loaded with sort of disdain and disgust. And instead of kind of going, okay, there's a logic behind why you're seeing more of your entertainment reflecting a more diverse.
Why aren't they marketing it that way though, and saying like in the preview, hey, you can choose your pronouns on this? Because I think they aren't, because it'll hurt their profit motive.
Sure. Yeah.
And don't you think that then they're only putting it in the game to make certain people happy? And then what's the morality behind that if they're just doing it for money?
Okay, I will tell you every company is doing everything for money. There's not, I mean, that's.
But then I don't understand.
That's not a gotcha.
What your statement was about. Well, you see, the games are changing, and it's going with how society's changing and all that. Maybe you didn't say that, but when I watched your video, that's kind of what you're alluding to.
No, so here's my take on it, because I watched y'all's video as well, where you were saying, I think you were speculating. I think you were like, well, what if 7% of America's LGBT? So why don't we only have 7% in video games reflected? Like, so 7% of video games have an LGBT character or something like that, correct? That was kind of your gist, right? Okay, so first off, it's more than 7%. It's currently at 12-13%. But it's not anywhere near the majority.
But that is, if you divide those up, that's gay, lesbian, bisexual. Right. We are not all the same.
Right.
Okay, but I'm saying that group, that LGBT whatever, IA, I don't, 12%. Okay. But let's say it's 3%, right? The fact of the matter is what you also have is the people who make your entertainment, whether it is video games, whether it's that Hamilton poster behind you on your wall,
Benjamin Franklin time traveler, but go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, but it looks like Hamilton. It's supposed to, right? I would say out of that, let's just say 3%, you have not a majority, but you have probably 30 to 40% of people in that group that are, affiliated with more of a progressive mindset and or part of the LGBT community or an LGBT ally. And so it's not that the games or the movies or whatever are being made because the powers that be think, oh, if we do this 3%, blah, blah, blah. It's that the people who show up to work, who don't strike like the writers, you don't have the writers, you can't work. You don't have the actors, you can't work. Those people are like, look, this is our life. This is our family. These are our families. These are ourselves.
Their bubble. This is their bubble.
Sure.
So again, we're going back to the morality of it.
No,
because they think it's a moral thing to add that into the game so that they think represented.
Well, I don't know, but morality is a weird way to phrase it. They think it is valuable. Let's say this. Tell me if you agree with this. They think it's valuable to have representation.
Why? Because it's a good thing for them. So that's morality, right?
I mean, if that's your morality, usually to me means sort of a definition of right and wrong, good and bad at a high meta level. But sure, if that fits the definition, but they think there is value in and I agree in having diversity and people represented in video games.
Okay, so with diversity, what about the Christian population that far exceeds the LGBT population when, Christian population doesn't have nearly as much representation, hardly any at all, but you don't see people like myself who are Christian who are saying that games have to insert Christianity, because I don't think that's the case. I don't think that they have.
Well, yeah, but aren't you guys frying bigger fish than video games right now? I mean, you're stopping women from having abortions. You're doing that. That takes a lot of energy, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that the far right religious community that has hijacked the GOP is pushing an agenda, and you can't deny that. Now,
why do they have to demand that? Shouldn't the religious people who make the games, like you said,
but religious people don't make the game. This is what I'm saying.
So you're assuming religious people who make games aren't religious, right? I'm
not assuming anything. I worked in games for 20 years, and what I can tell you is that, are there people who are religious? Sure. The producer of God of War 3, I was stunned. I mean, I was raised Jewish, but I was an agnostic since I was 7 years old. I was just like, I don't really believe in any of this. I don't know what's happening. And I remember one weekend, he's like, oh, I got to leave early. It's Easter weekend. I'm like, to me, that just means, oh, the Ten Commandments is coming on ABC. I knew, but it's a big deal. I know Melanie's like, yeah, fucker, it's a big deal. But I mean, it's like they had a big block party and they, somebody dressed up as the Easter Bunny and all the kids were excited. My point is, yes, there are religious people that make video games, of course, but the vast majority of people who go into the arts are not conservative and or religious people. They're just not.
Yeah. And I want to be really clear, right? Like, I feel like you're kind of labeling the show because somebody on Twitter
I'm responding to Melanie's point about.
Right. But
so representation should only matter to people who are artists.
Well, and I was
if
just
you're
making
the content,
why are they only representing people? You said it involves them,
Well,
so they add it to the game. So they're not representing anybody unless it affects them.
Right.
No,
like that's what I'm saying. It's not like a.
What I'm saying is that is their worldview of this is who we are surrounded by. This is who we are. These are our families. We are comfortable with it. We not only are comfortable with it, but we like the fact that people are feeling free to express who they are and what they want. And they're not being put into boxes that they feel for them. Not for me, not for you, but for them, don't serve them. So they're saying we're going to express that in our games. Now you say, well, where are the Christian characters in video games?
Right. But to be truly inclusive, shouldn't they think outside of their own
the job is
bubble?
Well, first off, one could argue that the white, male, straight Christian character has had plenty of representation in media from the very beginning.
I'm talking about like disabled people, people in wheelchairs, people who need
crutches, blind people, deaf
people.
Okay, well, you're seeing more of that.
If you enjoyed that clip, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Would greatly appreciate that so you can find more clips on the channel. And of course, come join us live Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Central Time for our live Side Scrollers podcast. We would love to see you there.